Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the season preview for season 2021-22. I'm joined by Terry McAllister. We're back for a new season, and one that doesn't seem to hold much promise at this early stage, with a couple of days to go until the very first game. Not a lot of transfer activity to discuss in this show, unfortunately, but we'll get straight down to it. Terry, a lot's changed, hasn't it, since the last time we spoke? I think the last time we were discussing anything on this channel together, it was Ancelotti had just walked out, and there was a lot of uncertainty then. And I think if anything, it's become more of a depressing certainty since, hasn't it? Obviously a manager that's widely unpopular, but seems to be growing on people, and not a lot of activity. It hasn't really set the tone as if to the start of the season.
No, we're going into it quite subdued, aren't we? But I'm not particularly down. I've got to be honest. I'm not, completely gassed up and, full of hype for the new season, but I'm not dreading it either. I'm happy to, for Goodison to be back open and, fans to be back properly. I still think we've got, the core of a good team. The transfer business hasn't been, gripping, has it? But it's been a sort of acceptance and a facing up to a very real problem at the club, which is we've ran afoul of financial regulations because of how we've wasted money in the past few years. So we're basically just having to cut our cloth accordingly, and that's why I think the mood's come down. I think if the three players we brought in would have been different, more exciting players, I don't think there'd be this pessimism around the manager. I think it would be like, right, well, we're going to make a good step forward. But then the reality has been you bring in a manager who's quite unpopular, and then he brings in, very scruffy players, doesn't he? Like free transfers from Crystal Palace and, Bournemouth and what have you. So it doesn't light a fire under you. But the only way is up. Like if Benitez does well, he'll take people by surprise, and he'll prove some people wrong. And if he doesn't do well, he won't be in the job long because the Evertonians won't put up with a poor start from him, for better or worse, whether that's right or wrong. The reality is they won't. So it's going to be an interesting season. I'm not completely down about our chances, and the transfer window is still open. I remember back in the days before the window shut before the first game, it used to be your season only got going after the first international break when all your players settled in. It was like that when Martinez's first summer. He brought in Kone and Joe Robles and Antonin Alcaraz and all bums like that. But then at the end of the window, he brought in the core of went on to be his team: James McCarthy, Gareth Barry, Romelu Lukaku. I think the club needs to have another window like that where there's a massive, maybe not on deadlines if they can help it, but a massive surge in business once the first sale's done, if it is done, and turn people around, get people going for the season, because I think it is just all down to players coming in.
Well, it's actually a very similar situation that we find ourselves into the summer of 2013 when, like you say, a couple of bum players had come in at this stage. We had Delafeu, people were a bit excited about, but, other than that, it wasn't much to write home about. We just lost a manager who'd done relatively well and was generally well liked, and a new manager had come in, and there was a lot of uncertainty. I mean, it's one of those. It's very similar, like you say. The whole mood around the club could hinge on a couple of ins and a couple of outs. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, no one, even buying big players, there's still going to be some people who will never accept the manager. And there'll be some people who, even if you buy good players, the manager will have to prove himself to them. They won't give them the benefit of the doubt straight off. That's fine. I think every manager should be like that, even the ones we really like Carlo. We have to, he's got to prove it at the, whatever he is. He can't just skate on his previous successes. Benitez, certainly Benitez is the, second most decorated manager we've ever had. Like, only Carlo Ancelotti beats him, and it's all from previous management positions, not at Everton, of course. But so he comes with a pedigree as well. But because of, his recent, clubs and his performances and the style of football, and a little bit for some people his Liverpool connections, he doesn't garner that same sort of faith that Ancelotti did. But that means he's got to get the results that Ancelotti didn't get towards the end of last season. He's got to win home games. He's got to win away games. He's got to carry on the winning at big away grounds. He can't slide back into old Everton habits if he's going to keep this job. He's got to earn his stay, earn his keep. And at the minute, this squad we've got, we know what this squad's capable of. We've seen the best of them. We've seen the worst of them. The worst of them, once again, came out against Man United in the last friendly. Turgid performance, went missing a lot of the players. Only a friendly, I know, but it was more examples of what happened at the last game of last season against Man City. He needs to address things like that. And I think there's only so much you can improve the players you've got. I do think he needs players. I'm not saying give Benitez the empty blank checkbook and let him bring in all players he wants, but he needs players in key positions. He needs a right back. He needs a centre midfielder who can travel with the ball. I think he needs another winger. I'm not convinced with Andros Townsend for our right hand side. I think we need someone better than that. But I could be wrong. Rafa Benitez could have every intention of playing him every game on the right. But I think we need 3 or 4 players to really give Rafa a chance of impressing the supporters. And you might not get it because
I think that's the thing. In a way, I do feel for Benitez, because I think signs of what he's been trying to do, I think I have warmed to the idea of him as the manager, but I think he's being hung out to dry.
Pretty much. I mean, I don't think he's being hung out to dry. I think what people need to understand is the problems Everton are facing in this transfer window are not because of Rafa Benitez. They existed long before he walked in the door. We've wasted money on crap. We were literally against Man United in the last friendly. We were playing with a midfield with Iwobi and Townsend in it and Seamus Coleman still at right back, and we'd spent nearly £500 million. How have we got to this? How have we spent that much money and we've still got real scrappy type signings like Townsend on the pitch, wastes of money like Iwobi, and we're still playing a veteran right back who's needed replacing for about 3 years. I don't know that's why we're in the position we're in. It's not Benitez's fault, but he can't point to that. He hasn't got the benefits of the doubt. He hasn't got the credit in the bank with supporters to point to that if things go wrong, because he won't get, people won't absolve him of blame. They'll just say, well, you're here to fix it, so fix it. You're here to be part of the solution. Ancelotti was seemingly part of the solution, but then what happened. So Benitez needs to step into that role. There's no moaning about what came before. You've taken the job on in full knowledge of what the situation is. You need to improve things. You need to correct this problem. And maybe these signings, these free signings might be a step towards that, and we can go again in a year or two when things have leveled out financially a little bit on the spreadsheet, on the balance sheet. Maybe it's taken a step back, take a step forward. With time will tell. Right now, though, we're in the step back, and it's a little bit grim. It's a bit depressing signing players like that and having no money when you see the likes of, not even forget Man City, forget PSG. When you're looking at Aston Villa and Crystal Palace making good signings for young players, just think, how come we can't do that? It's well, we could have for the past 5 years, and we just didn't do it properly.
But this is the thing. I mean, with regards to you're saying, why can't we do that? Why weren't we doing that? That's the problem. Is no one's been held accountable for the errors of yesteryear. I mean, Steve Walsh was sacked. That's
the problem. Other people who were still in the club who were responsible for this. Some of them you can't punish because they own the club. Some of them you won't punish because they're the chairman of the club, and some of them are no longer at the club because they're ex-managers and they wanted their own way and wanted certain players. And some of them are currently the director of football at the club. Everyone's got to take blame. I'm not attributing blame to one such person. There's people I like at Everton more than others who I don't like at Everton, but they're all collectively to blame. It's widely known that certain board members are buying players off their own bat with the advice of agents, and certain other decisions have been made without the other support. It's a bit of a mess. So until they all get on the same page, we're not going to be successful. But the only one you can't change is Farhad Moshiri. He owns the clubs, and Farhad Moshiri has made the decision, seemingly against the wishes of the rest of the board, to bring in Benitez. So you got to hope that he gets that right, and he makes the change. Benitez brings the change Moshiri wants to see, because the others aren't going to go along with him. So if you've got to back one horse, back the one who is going to run and that's Moshiri. Like anyone else, whether even if you think they're right and Moshiri's wrong, they're not going to win a battle with Moshiri because he owns the club, as I say again.
Yeah, of course. But the issue is that there's not going to be any forward movement until these stakeholders, like you say, they sit down and have a discussion about this and like try and get themselves pushing in the same direction, because at the moment, like you say, there's no joined up thinking.
No, but you've got to say there's been Everton have not had a competent upstairs like sort of office department, you know, like the boardroom, whatever you want to call it, you know, that sort of level of the club from the inception of the Premier League has always been terrible compared to the other peers in the Premier League. We've always had a weak board, and we haven't been crap the whole time. There's been other times we've had good seasons when we've had good managers, you know, David Moyes, Martinez's first season, things like that. You can get, having a good manager who brings in good players can cover for a lot of those ills. Like Kenwright was a horrendous owner of Everton, but David Moyes still got the club regularly finishing in European places. I know that for me is not a benchmark for Everton, but it's certainly better than what we're doing now. So if you can get it right on the pitch, the boardroom can follow, but I think it should be the other way around. I think the boardroom should get on the same page.
The boardroom needs to set the standards, and they're not setting high enough standards.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, everyone blames Moshiri, but honestly, since the Premier League was founded, all the teams who founded the Premier League, who are still in the Premier League, all of the others have been to a Champions League final at least, and we've not even qualified properly for it. We qualified one year and went out in the knockout in the qualifying rounds. So what does that tell you about the way those clubs are run compared to us?
That was the thing. Even before the Premier League was founded, I think we were being run pretty poorly, and I think Endel did what he did in spite of it.
Yeah.
Apparently, from people saying the 80s successes maxed over that the club wasn't being run well even then. Someone said that the club hasn't been run well since the early 70s and has been in a managed decline ever since, someone said.
Well, I can't speak to that because I wasn't alive for that, but
yeah.
We'll get back to this season. I don't think the squad is in as bad shape as other people do. As there's glaring holes in it in the positions I mentioned before, but I think there's still the core of a decent team. I think adding the right players in those weak areas will change things. I think there's some players who are overrated in the team, but there's some players who are underrated and could form part of a much better team. It's just about getting those players in, and unfortunately, we're struggling because we need to sell players. But I think towards the end of the window, there will be movements. I think someone will probably come and take both Moise Kean and James Rodriguez, whether you want that or not. I think those two sales will happen, and it'll facilitate other moves.
But with that in mind, this is the problem. No one wants to buy the crap we've got.
No one wants to buy anyone's crap. It's the good players you can sell. If we put Calvert-Lewin up for sale, which we definitely shouldn't do, but if we did, there'd be loads of takers, but nobody wants Delph. You know what I mean? Nobody wants Iwobi. Would we want the worst players of other teams? That's just the top and bottom of it. That's why every year we're shedding loads of high earners off the wage bill. Doesn't help with FFP because we're not getting any money for them. We're not selling them, but we're getting rid of them that way because no one's going to buy Walcott, no one's going to buy Balassi, and again it'll be the same with Delph. I don't think Delph's going anywhere. No one's going to touch him with his injury records and those wages. They'll just at best loan him and then make a decision, see how he does there. Like you read it with Gareth Barry, and they might sign him on a free after that, but we'd just be happy to get him out the door. But I don't even think we're going to manage that. But there's young players and good players are always capable to be sold. So young player being Moise Kean and a good player being James Rodriguez, despite their issues, they've got something worth buying. The likes of Delph, who the hell was going to be, other than Everton, is stupid enough to buy Delph?
And this is the thing, we've said this on a couple of occasions, is that we're always saying who's going to buy our Deadwood. When any other club, someone said this, when any other club asks the question who's going to buy our Deadwood, they go, Everton.
Probably Everton. We've done it to Arsenal twice. We gave them
25 million for Walcott and 30 million for Iwobi.
Yeah, we gave them 55 million for those two duds, and they must have just been laughing at us. And we need to just stop doing that. Now, some of the players we're getting linked with does make me think we're still doing that. You know what I mean? But it just depends whether we get them or not. Like if we go and sign Harry Winks, we are taking an absolute dud off of Spurs' hands. They'll be laughing at us the same way Arsenal did with Iwobi. So anyone like that comes in, I'm just going to, I'm going to go into a deep depression. But there are some other players who aren't as, depressing. Today, this will probably age very badly, very quickly, but we're being linked with like Dennis Zagaria and people like that. If we can manage to get players out the door and bring in players like that, that'll have a totally different perspective on the summer. But it's yet to happen, obviously.
I think until it does, I think fans will be very sceptical of the prospects for this season. I think for the new season, of course, in terms of the squad we have got, it's where do you think, obviously the right back you've mentioned, but where else do you think do we look pretty weak? I mean,
centre midfield, easily. We've got a lot of bodies there, but not much quality. Decore is our best player in there, and that's just because of his physicality. He doesn't he hasn't contributed a lot in the terms of goals and what have you. But he's without him, we couldn't buy a win towards the end of last season. Alan blows hot and cold. Some games he's really good, and some games he's terrible and gets a chasing around the park. And then outside of that, who is there? Gbamin, I'm not going to make any predictions about Gbamin. I hope the lad stays injury free and I hope he's good. I don't know. But outside of that, Gomez, nice on the eye, waste of space, just looks good, doesn't actually do anything. He's a Fabergé egg of a player. Looks good when he's doing something, but he actually doesn't do very much. Delph, say no more. Tom Davies, passable, good player. If we had another, solid midfielder, or two maybe, then he could be in the mix. But when he's your third best midfielder, your midfield department's weak. So I think we need a box to box midfielder, someone physically strong, quick, who can travel with the ball. Someone, like a healthy, bigger James McCarthy, that type of player. Doesn't even need to be a goal scorer, just someone who travels with the ball and can hold down the midfield, because we just get walked past when we've got the likes of Gomez in midfield.
Yeah, obviously it's really tough to watch that kind of midfield. And this is the thing, when we were discussing, I think it was me and your Paul were discussing this on the show recently, about many of the Everton pet hates that I witness on the pitch on the regular. And one of those is obviously the lack of running, too much walking. Whether that's can't or won't, we don't know sometimes. But too much walking, there's the too pedestrian, no real desire to run. And the other two pet hates that I mentioned, three actually. One in general, lack of movement off the ball. I don't know why that is, but this isn't just recently. This is a thing that I've seen through generations. They say the deal, as long as I've been watching Everton, we don't seem to move off the ball as well as a lot of other teams.
Yeah. Doesn't matter what era of Everton it is. There's always things like that, and we can't take a throw in, and it's just the same film.
I was saying the three pet hates. That was about to be number two. Is we never don't take a quick throw in to save our lives.
Yeah, that's my number one. But it's just like every Everton team with various players got the same problems. It's the same film, but with different actors every time. It's just always the same story, though. But this is what I mean. You've got to just hope with every new manager that he'll address those problems. I thought Ancelotti was addressing some of them. He got the big away ground, and the Anfield hoodoo and all things like that. He got rid of some of them. And who knows what else he'd have addressed if he'd have stayed. But now Benitez's job is to carry that on, sort the throw-ins out, sort the movements off the ball, sort the mentality to see out games, and not
just tell someone you can kick it in the goal from outside the box.
Exactly. So this season is the most interesting one for a while. Obviously, last season was very interesting because it was Carlo Ancelotti. But this one is really, what's this going to be like? It's the first time an ex-Liverpool manager has managed Everton. The fans are against him for a large part, not everyone obviously, but a large section of the fans are against him. And there's very little expectation, so he can overachieve, or he can prove everyone, all the naysayers, right. It's going to be, put it this way, we'll be on television a lot more because Sky and BT will lap up the story, the narrative of Everton under Benitez. So we'll at least make a bit more money from being on television a lot more regularly, I think.
Yeah, as long as it's not 4-0 whoopings every week, it wouldn't mind. But
they wouldn't mind that, but me and you would, obviously. Sky would love it.
I'll be dead by the end of the season if we carry on like that. But honestly, it's just the prospects aren't like amazing. But like you say, sometimes it's best to fly under the radar, and we might do okay. The aim for me, I just want to see, and I think Benitez is. I think that's the one thing that has helped me warm to Benitez is that his teams are usually quite workmanlike and quite cohesive in what they do. They know what they're doing, and that's sometimes. I think that's definitely something we need to be more well drilled. And I think Benitez is probably one of the better managers at delivering that. So, if he does that for us, then that'll do us a lot of favours. Because sometimes we just don't look cohesive at all.
Yeah, I just want to see stability and progression. I don't even think that has to entail a particular, qualify for Europe, win a cup. I really want to do all that. But for me now, at this point, all I want is for the players, especially the players we want and want to build around, like the Godfreys and the Calvert-Lewins. I want them to have another good season. I want them to have back-to-back good seasons. I want Everton to be competitive against the big teams and, definitely get some consistency at home where we become a hard team to beat again. Just build a platform. If you finish 10th again, we can see there's improvements and a platform to go forward when we can spend more money. That'd be great. I don't expect big things straight away. I expect the first foundation of a house to go down. I don't expect, the garden to be put in, that kind of thing.
That's the problem. I think that's sometimes we get a bit too ahead of ourselves. It doesn't seem to be a plan, or even when the plan starts to make progress, material splash out on someone.
Doesn't even need to be a plan because plans can change. It just needs to be a foundation. So, if we do change manager again, or if we do, we've got that core there. Look, the extreme example of this is Chelsea. They've got a foundation and a core and a framework which always stays the same, which means they can always change manager and change players, and the core remains the same, and it doesn't upset things and start from scratch. We need that. We need to build around a group of young, aggressive, ambitious players, the likes of Godfrey, the likes of Calvert-Lewin, even the likes of Holgate a season ago when he was in that purple patch of form. You can get him back to that. I'm happy for him to be in it at the minute. His stock's a bit low. Build around them, and then when we can spend money again, when the finances are a little bit more stable and even, then you can just add players to complement it. Going right, well, we've got Townsend and he's done for a season, or whatever. Let's get a proper right winger now because we've built the blueprint, and we'll just add someone better in that position. Same on the other side with Gray. We've sold Richarlison next summer. Well, we know exactly what we need. We need a direct sort of physical type runner to go alongside Calvert-Lewin. We build a framework that you can sort of, modularly change about. It doesn't have to be, this is our vision and we have to stick to that vision and only these players fit it, because then you start from scratch every time. I don't want a vision. I want flexibility.
That's the thing. I think we do need that blueprint, like you say, though. We need to know what the style is, what we're doing, and, the type of player we need for each of those roles. And, that's really what a director of football should be doing.
Well, I agree, but I'd stop short of criticising Brands for not implementing that, because it's quite clear that he's not entirely allowed to implement a lot of things, because there's signings being made against his wishes. There's managers being appointed against his wishes. There's certain coaches on the youth side of things, which I'm sure protected by people above Brands, and things he can't change. So there's a lot going on there that I can't really blame Brands for. It's more a case of a problem with Everton.
Politics problem by the sound of it.
Yeah, but I'll say no more about that. But there's a lot that goes on that people blame Brands on, which I'm sure he's not allowed to touch.
Oh no. He's done things wrong, but he's not responsible for the lot.
Exactly.
There's plenty more culpable characters, I think, at Everton than him. Put it that way.
Yeah.
And with regard to that, obviously, like squad, that's what we want to get to. I think we want to get. You need to look at the players, find the weak link, and address the weak link rather than going, "Oh, James Rodriguez is available. Let's go and get him." Like that. type of thing. You know, with it, you need to look and see what the immediate issues are and rectify those before you go and spend your money on luxuries.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to, whether Benitez will do it, because I don't know whether he'll have the time to do this, you need to transition away from buying, no matter how good they are, like James. I love James, but now I think he's probably a hindrance because of his money and the fact that the manager doesn't like him and blah, 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 and he's not going to play all the games. I'm fine with James going if he's replaced by one, maybe two young players who you can build around, more Godfreys. If you bring in two more Godfreys for James, that's fine. If you bring in another Townsend, then I'm not fine, because I'd rather just have the quality if I'm going to buy an old crab, you know what I mean? I'd rather have the really good player who's old and expensive than the less good player who works a bit harder, but he's not as good and he's also old and, you know, expensive.
Basically. Yeah, so with that in mind though, I always think this, and I'd say this a lot on these shows, I am all for buying from the Championship and below, because you see our track record of buying players from that level. I read a tweet about this actually myself today, and
I saw that same tweet. Yeah, the record from the Football League is exemplary compared to like the buyers from abroad. Like in the last 5 years, they've always been good players who we've used or players who sold on well. Whereas everyone from abroad seems to be terrible, or players
to be honest, the EFL signings have always been very strong, and you know, the ones that haven't worked out, like Lookman, we still, like you say, managed to sell for a profit. We signed under 23 players from the lower leagues, and the other thing is that you can't understate, when you sign a player from that level, it's like a dream come true for them to play for Everton.
Their opportunity, they're an aspirational player. That's their, like, sort of, this is their chance to prove themselves and establish themselves. Whereas in special cases, I think it's fine, the likes of Luca Dean, but when you're buying quality players who are out of favour at bigger clubs, you got to question their motivation. Like, I'm not against that outright. Like, I still, again, in the same circumstances, would have bought Yerry Mina, Luca Dean, and at the time Andre Gomez, because the loan spell was good. I don't think that was the wrong thing to do. I just think it's not worked out. But the likes of James, as much as we love him, as good as he is, you know, what's he doing here? He's an elite Champions League level player with injury problems. He's only come here because of the manager we had,
and injury problems.
Yeah, you've got to wonder about the motivations of some of these players. Basically, I've said this a million times. I'm not the only one who said it. You need a team of Godfreys. You need a team of players who are making that step up, who want to progress their career. We can sell ourselves as a club, as a clear pathway to international football. Club players who come to Everton from lower clubs who aren't in the international picture. I've got a lot of examples to point at and go, Richarlison wasn't even on the radar for Brazil, and now he's gone from that to a regular start in Brazil forward, which is not an easy place.
Golden boot in the Olympics, which is actually a bigger deal for Brazil, the Olympic football.
Yeah, but even then, like, he's not even on the radar to be a regular starting forward for Brazil, and that's a very exclusive club to be in. It's not like, you're playing for Montenegro, you're playing as up front for Brazil, and you're constantly playing. Godfrey went from nowhere in the England picture to being on the reserve list for the Euros after one season at Everton.
There's got Calvert-Lewin and Pickford are obviously the big ones. Even Michael Keane.
Yeah, you can, if you're a young player and Everton come knocking for you and you're in the Championship or whatever, you can say, if I succeed at Everton, that is a stepping stone to the international team. And that's regardless of whether you're English or another club. I think Gabriel, before he went to Arsenal, I think he'd made the same sort of observation, like, well, Richarlison went from nowhere to the Brazil team. I think I'll do that at Everton. And then obviously whatever happened there. But that's the way we want to sell ourselves to clubs. If you're nowhere, but you've got the ability and you make it at Everton, you will be an international player.
It's a good way of, like, selling the club to these players. And you want players to want to sign for us. I don't want players to re-sign for us because we offered an extra 20 grand a week than Tottenham did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it shows like as well with Moise Kean. Well, he did well at PSG. He went, yeah, but there's a difference between if he'd stayed at Everton and established himself and was scoring every week or playing well every week in the Premier League, he'd have been much better placed than being the sort of player who lets Neymar rest by playing the games that no one cares about in the French league. I know he did well at PSG and he scored some goals in the Champions League. I'm not saying he did badly, but do you think Roberto Mancini would have preferred him to be playing in the French league or in the Premier League?
No, I get that argument, but what you've got in the team, Calvert-Lewin's been doing well, and Keane hadn't set the league alight in his first season.
If he applies himself, he could have, because Ancelotti started the season with a 4-3-3, and whenever James didn't play, you could have had Moise Kean as a part of a front three. He just didn't want to work for it. He didn't want to do the track and back that was involved in the Premier League. Went to League One and just had the easy life. Did well to score the goals he did. But if you're an international manager, if you're Mancini, you think, well, yeah, he's scoring goals against bums and window cleaners at PSG, but I would have been able to rely on him a little bit more if he'd have applied himself in the Premier League. I'm not saying he'd decided not to take him for that reason, but I think he would have had a better chance if he'd have done well at Everton compared to PSG. PSG are a galaxy bigger than Everton at the minute. But it doesn't necessarily translate to the player, makes himself more attractive to an international manager because he's playing weaker opposition every week.
Exactly. It's one of those, I think, to play for Everton in the Premier League is it's a massive challenge. It is, and for these players, like I say, coming from a lower league, though, I think, like you say, Moise Kean came from Juventus. And, in doing so, I think he thought by going from Juventus, where he was getting a few games here and there, to Everton, because we're at a lower level than Juve are at the moment, he's probably saw that as, I should be starting here, and if I'm not, I should kick a fuss.
He just didn't apply himself, but the players who did have progressed in their careers, and that's just the two things. You can point at him as a reason, him as a player who didn't work, and other players who have. And probably soon Moise Kean won't be our problem anymore, one way or the other. So I'm just saying that's the way the club should go. You've got it right with that, records in the lower divisions. Sign aspirational players who've got talent because we've shown we can do it. But it's when we sign off other Premier League teams that we struggle, the likes of Iwobi, the likes of, the player we don't mention, that one. So we've gone wildly off point. But yeah, I think there is reasons to not be down about the season coming. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be unlike any season before, and it has got the potential to surprise us. I'm not happy with the players we've signed. I'm not that concerned about the manager. I think the manager is a bold move by Moshiri. I think it could work. I'm very underwhelmed by the players we've signed, but if at the end of the window we've added some young, hungry, aspirational players in the key areas that we need, the right back, centre midfield, etc., then I'll feel a lot better about it. We need another Martinez's first window. The first few players he brought in, apart from Deulofeu, really were squad cover. Kone, Alcaraz, Robles, etc. Whereas at the end of the window, when the money got freed up by the Fellaini sale, we bought the key players of the team. If we do that again, we could have a really good season, but we're obviously sitting right now recording this before that's happened.
Of course. Finishing up with the season preview, of course, I think we've gone through the majority of the sort of squad issues, transfer issues. Big one. How do you think we'll get on this season? Predictions?
Could finish anywhere from 6th to 12th. It's very tight, very, very tight. So I'm just going to have a stab in the dark and say 8th.
8th. That's optimistic as far as I'm concerned.
Fair enough.
I said on a previous show, I reckoned about 14th this season.
Oh, I don't know about that. I know even my low ball wouldn't be as low as that because let's have it right. We're still better than quite a lot of the teams in the league. It's just that there's other teams around us improving, which puts a bit of doubt, like Sevilla. But Tottenham are about to decrease in ability quite a lot if they sell Harry Kane. Still not convinced by Arsenal. Villa, they've signed a lot of attractive looking players, but we did that in 2017 and we were awful. So
no,
it's
but
not
they've signed it quite well though. They've bought for the right positions, and I think
true. If they've made a better goal with than we have, but there's still no guarantee these players will work because it's just they could come in and be duds. You know what I mean? You just don't know.
no,
But
you can never gauge it. But
in any case, I'm 8 is optimistic, but I think 14th is very pessimistic.
yeah, well, not to be honest, 14th is kind of middle of the road. I'm feeling the worst this season. Not because of Benitez, but more because of the players, to be honest.
We'll see. The benchmark is 59 points. I don't think we'll get that again because I don't think we've got as good a manager. But we could finish better than 10th. I just don't think we'll get more than 59 points.
We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, there's the season preview. We'll wrap it up there. It's not the most optimistic season preview, but then again, there'll have been seasons where we thought we were, going to get the top four, and God forbid, what season preview was like in 2017 before the season we finished it with Allardyce. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those. I can't imagine. Like it must have been. It was so strange that season, and just at least whatever happens, we'll never be more underwhelmed than we were that season.
Yeah, let's hope that's rock bottom. Can't get any worse.
Fingers crossed. But there you have it, guys. Let us know your opinions on how you feel about us going into the season. Drop us some predictions in the comments below. Give this video a like and subscribe for more content as we move ahead to a brand new season. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching on the Toffee Blues.